Her phone slipped from her trembling hands as she stared at the message she had just sent. It wasn't meant for him. It was meant for a friend. Just $50 to survive another week. But the billionaire who read it stared at the screen in silence, realizing her desperation would change both their lives forever. Maya sat on the cold floor of her tiny apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling as rain tapped against the window like an impatient visitor. The electricity had been cut an hour ago, and the refrigerator hummed its final farewell before falling silent. Her stomach growled. The hunger had become an old companion, almost familiar. She glanced at her phone, calculating how much she could stretch the last $10 in her wallet. Her fingers trembled as she typed a message to her best friend, Sarah. "Hey, I hate to ask again, but could you send me $50? I promise I'll pay you back when I get my paycheck." She hesitated before pressing send. Pride burned her chest, but survival burned stronger. She didn't notice that her phone had autocorrected the contact. Her message wasn't sent to Sarah. It went to a number she barely remembered saving months ago. Across the city, in a penthouse lit by chandeliers and skyline views, Daniel Cross stared at his phone. Billionaire tech mogul, media darling, a man who had everything money could buy. And yet, the message on his screen stopped him cold. He reread it slowly. Not a scam. Not an employee. Just a woman asking for $50 to survive. Something in his chest tightened. A feeling he hadn't felt in years. He typed back, "Who is this?" Maya's phone buzzed. Her heart skipped. She hadn't expected a reply. Maya's breath caught as she read the reply. Her first instinct was panic. Had she texted the wrong person? She scrolled through her contacts, realizing her mistake. The number belonged to Daniel Cross, the man whose company she had interned for briefly before layoffs swept through her department. She remembered him only from corporate emails and motivational speeches on screens. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She considered ignoring the message, pretending it never happened. But desperation outweighed embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. This message wasn't meant for you. Please ignore it." She hit send and dropped her phone, face buried in her hands. Shame washed over her. She felt small and visible, like her struggles didn't matter in a world where people like him existed. Daniel stared at her reply. He could have ignored it. It was just a mistake. A stranger. But something about the simplicity of her message haunted him. $50. Such a small amount to him. Yet it meant survival to her. He walked to the window, looking down at the city streets where thousands lived lives he never saw. He remembered his own childhood, his mother crying over unpaid bills, his father working double shifts. He had sworn he would never live like that again. He typed again. "Why do you need it?" Maya hesitated. Then she answered honestly. "I lost my job during layoffs. I've been applying everywhere. Rent is due. My power just got cut. I just needed enough for groceries." Her honesty surprised even herself. She expected judgment, maybe silence. Instead, 3 dots appeared on her screen. Then his reply came. "Send me your payment details." Maya stared at the message, convinced she was hallucinating. A billionaire offering her money? Her first thought was suspicion, but desperation had stripped her of caution. She sent the details with shaking hands. Minutes later, her phone buzzed again. $5,000 received. She dropped the phone. Her breath caught in her throat. Tears streamed down her face as she stared at the screen. This wasn't just groceries. This was rent, electricity, survival. She typed frantically. "Sir, this is too much. I only asked for $50. Daniel watched her reaction through the messages. He imagined her shock, her disbelief. He remembered what it felt like when someone had once helped his mother in a similar moment. "Consider it a second chance," he replied. Maya sat in the darkness, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She had no words, no explanation, only gratitude and disbelief. She felt something unfamiliar. Hope. The next morning, sunlight poured into Maya's apartment as power returned, lights flickering back to life. She felt like she had stepped into a different world overnight. She paid her rent, stocked her fridge, and finally took a deep breath without fear. But the money weighed on her conscience. She didn't want charity. She wanted dignity. She messaged Daniel again. "Thank you. I will pay you back. I promise." His reply was immediate. "You don't owe me money. You owe yourself a future." Those words echoed in her mind. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She spent the day updating her resume, applying for jobs with renewed confidence. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a burden to the world. Meanwhile, Daniel found himself thinking about her. Her message had awakened something inside him, a reminder of why he started his company, why he believed technology could empower people. He looked at his bank statements, his luxury lifestyle, and wondered when he had stopped noticing struggles outside his glass walls. He scheduled a meeting with his assistant. "Find Maya Khan. I want to meet her." For Maya, life was changing. For Daniel, purpose was returning. Neither of them knew how deeply this accidental text would intertwine their destinies. A week later, Maya sat in a sleek conference room she had only seen in documentaries. Glass walls, city views, polished tables. This was Daniel Cross's headquarters. She clutched her notebook like armor, her heart racing. Daniel entered quietly, wearing a simple suit, nothing like the intimidating billionaire persona she had imagined. His eyes were thoughtful, not arrogant. He sat across from her, studying her expression. "You didn't have to come," he said softly, "but I'm glad you did." Maya swallowed. "I didn't know how to thank you." He leaned back. "Tell me your story." She hesitated, then spoke. About losing her job, caring for a younger brother, growing up in a struggling household, and dreaming of stability. Her voice cracked as she described nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering if life would ever change. Daniel listened silently, absorbing every word. He felt something unfamiliar, regret that he had built an empire while so many struggled in silence. I didn't send you that money to feel powerful," he said. "I send it because I remember what it's like to need $50. She looked up, surprised. He smiled gently. "And I think this wasn't an accident. I think this was meant to happen." After the meeting, Maya walked out of the building with mixed emotions swirling inside her. Gratitude, disbelief, and fear tangled together. Daniel's kindness felt real, but part of her wondered when the other shoe would drop. Life had taught her that miracles rarely lasted. Days later, she received an email from Daniel's company offering her a short-term consulting role. It wasn't charity, it was work. Her hands shook as she read the offer again and again. For the first time, someone wasn't just helping her survive. They were trusting her potential. Daniel, meanwhile, found himself restless. He told himself this was just another act of kindness, but something deeper pulled at him. Watching Maya work remotely, he noticed her discipline, her attention to detail, and her quiet resilience. She didn't waste the opportunity. She treated every task like it mattered, because to her it did. Late one night, Daniel sat alone in his office, memories surfacing. He remembered being a teenager, watching his mother count coins at the kitchen table, pretending everything was fine. No one had stepped in back then. No one had changed everything with a single act of compassion. He whispered to himself, "Maybe this is how I fix what I couldn't back then." Maya, unaware of his inner turmoil, worked late into the night, fueled by something stronger than fear, hope. And hope, once ignited, refused to be ignored. As weeks passed, Maya's confidence began to grow. She paid bills on time, cooked proper meals, and even laughed again, something she hadn't done freely in months. But with stability came fear. What if this opportunity disappeared as suddenly as it arrived? One evening, she received a message from Daniel asking her to meet again. Her stomach tightened. She feared bad news. Instead, he surprised her. "You're doing exceptional work," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "I want to offer you a full-time position." Maya's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes as she struggled to process his words. I don't want special treatment, she said softly. Daniel nodded. You're not getting it. You earned this. Outside the room, whispers began. Employees noticed. Rumors formed. Some admired Daniel's generosity. Others questioned Maya's presence. Online blogs started speculating, billionaire savior or emotional impulse. Daniel saw the headlines, but didn't respond. He knew the cost of kindness in a cynical world. Still, doubt crept in. Was he helping her because it was right, or because it healed something broken inside him? Maya felt the tension too. She overheard comments, felt eyes linger. She questioned herself every night. But still she showed up. Still, she worked harder than anyone else. Because second chances don't come quietly, they come with tests. The pressure finally caught up with Maya the day she made a small mistake on a major report. It was corrected quickly, but whispers grew louder. She sat alone in the restroom, staring at her reflection, feeling like an imposter in borrowed success. She texted Daniel, hesitating before sending. I understand if you regret helping me. Daniel read the message during a board meeting. It struck him harder than any financial loss ever had. He excused himself and called her immediately. Maya, he said firmly, do you know how many mistakes I made building this company? She was silent. No one questioned my right to fail, he continued. Don't let anyone take yours away. That night, Daniel opened up to her for the first time. He spoke about losing his parents young, about building wealth as armor against grief, about how lonely success could be. Maya listened, realizing that pain didn't disappear with money. It just did better. In that moment, their connection shifted. It wasn't savior and survivor anymore. It was two people, shaped by loss, choosing empathy over distance. Sometimes, kindness doesn't just lift one person. It reminds both that they're human. Media attention intensified when a leaked story revealed Daniel had helped an employee financially. Public opinion split overnight. Some praised his compassion. Others accused him of favoritism and emotional decision-making. Daniel's board demanded answers. This could damage the company, they warned. For the first time, Daniel hesitated, not because he doubted Maya, but because he feared losing everything he had built. Old instincts urged him to retreat, to protect himself the way he always had. Maya sensed the shift. She requested a meeting and stood before him, hands steady, voice calm. If my presence is hurting you or the company, she said, I'll walk away. What you gave me already changed my life. Daniel looked at her and saw integrity, not desperation. In that moment, he made a choice, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a man. I won't undo kindness to protect comfort, he said. He addressed the board publicly, owning his decision without apology. Empathy isn't weakness, he said. It's leadership. The fallout was brutal but honest, and Maya realized something powerful. Real second chances don't come without risk. They come when someone chooses courage over fear. The storm slowly settled. Some investors left. Others stayed, inspired by Daniel's stand. Maya remained, not shielded, but respected. She grew into her role, mentoring others quietly, helping where she could, never forgetting where she started. One evening, Maya stood on her apartment balcony, city lights glowing below. She typed a message to Sarah, the friend she meant to text that night. I'm okay now, and someday, I'll be the person who answers someone else's desperate message. Daniel, across the city, stared at his phone, not at stock prices or news articles, but at a simple note Maya had sent earlier. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. He realized then that the message she sent by accident hadn't just changed her life. It had changed his definition of success. Because wealth wasn't what you accumulated. It was what you chose to do when someone asked for just $50, and you answered with humanity. Success didn't arrive loudly for Maya. It settled in quietly. A steady paycheck, respectful nods in meetings, emails that began with her name instead of her title. Yet beneath the surface, guilt followed her like a shadow. She couldn't forget the version of herself who had sat on a dark apartment floor, begging for $50. One afternoon, she noticed a janitor named Luis working late, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Something about his eyes felt familiar. When she spoke to him, she learned he was supporting 2 children after his wife's death. Maya felt a tightness in her chest. Pain had patterns. That night, she transferred money to him anonymously. Not much, but enough to breathe. As she pressed send, her hands shook the same way they had the night she texted Daniel. Across the city, Daniel sat alone in his office, staring at an old photograph of his mother. The company was stabilizing again, but something still felt unfinished. Helping Maya had opened a door inside him he didn't know how to close. He wondered how many people were still sitting in the dark, phones trembling in their hands, afraid to ask. And for the first time, he realized kindness wasn't a moment. It was a responsibility. The breaking point came quietly. Daniel's board presented him with an ultimatum: step back from daily leadership or risk another investor exodus. The message was clear. His compassion had made him unpredictable. That night, he walked through his empty penthouse, the silence louder than any argument. He thought of the message Maya sent by mistake. $50. That was all it had taken to expose how fragile life could be. Meanwhile, Maya was offered a promotion, one that would move her to another city. It was everything she had once dreamed of, but accepting it meant leaving behind the quiet work she had begun, helping others quietly and visibly. She met Daniel one last time before deciding. "What if choosing kindness cost you everything?" she asked. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then you find out what everything was really worth. The next morning, Daniel resigned as CEO. The news shocked the world. Headlines screamed downfall and scandal. Maya watched the announcement in silence, tears slipping down her face. She felt responsible, though she knew she wasn't. Daniel sent her one message: don't ever shrink your heart to make others comfortable. And in that moment, Maya understood sacrifice wasn't loss. It was alignment. Daniel disappeared from the spotlight. No interviews, no statements. The world moved on quickly, as it always did. But inside him, something finally felt quiet. He began working on a small foundation, no press, no branding. Just emergency grants, rent, groceries, $50 miracles. Maya declined a promotion. Instead, she joined Daniel's foundation, working behind the scenes, reviewing messages that felt hauntingly familiar. Each story carried echoes of her own past. She read them slowly, carefully, never rushing desperation. One night, she paused at a message. I didn't mean to text you. I just don't know who else to ask." Her hands trembled. She approved the help without hesitation. Daniel watched her work, seeing not an employee, but a mirror, proof that compassion multiplied when trusted. He realized stepping away from power had given him something far greater: purpose without performance. Months passed. Lives changed quietly. No headlines followed. And Maya understood something profound. Second chances don't erase pain. They transform it into empathy. One rainy evening, Maya returned to her old apartment building. The lights were on now. New paint covered old cracks. She stood there, remembering who she used to be. She texted Sarah, the friend she never sent that message to. "I'm sorry I disappeared when things got dark. I survived." Sarah replied instantly, "I never stopped worrying about you." Inside the building, a young woman sat on the stairs, crying into her phone. Maya recognized the posture, the fear, the silence. She sat beside her. "You don't have to go through this alone," she said gently. Across the city, Daniel locked up the foundation office for the night. He looked at the skyline, not as a conqueror, but as a caretaker. He realized wealth had never been the answer. Attention was. And somewhere between a wrong text and a right decision, both of them had found what money never promised: meaning. On the anniversary of the accidental text, Maya and Daniel stood together in the foundation's modest office. No cameras, no applause, Just a wall covered in handwritten thank you notes. Daniel broke the silence. Do you ever think about that night? Maya smiled softly. Every day. If you could change it, would you? She shook her head. Pain introduced us to purpose. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had spent years building systems to protect himself from feeling. And yet, one unintended message had dismantled every wall. They stood quietly, reading notes from strangers who would never know their names. Rent paid, lights restored, hope returned. Sometimes, change doesn't begin with a plan. It begins with a mistake. And sometimes, the smallest request, just $50, is really a question. Will you see me? The foundation grew quietly, almost invisibly, like roots spreading beneath the soil. No logos dominated billboards. No interviews followed. Help arrived without fanfare, without expectations. That was the rule Daniel insisted on. Kindness, he believed, should never need applause. Maya now led the intake team. Every message crossed her screen slowly, intentionally. She read each one as if it were sacred. Some asked for rent. Some asked for medicine. Some asked for dignity. She remembered how it felt to write with shaking hands, afraid of being judged. One evening, she paused at a message from a single mother who wrote, I don't need much. I just need to get through this week. Maya closed her eyes. That sentence echoed from her past. She approved the request and added a note. You matter more than this moment. Hold on. Across the office, Daniel watched her quietly. He saw not an employee, not a success story, but proof that compassion, once received, longs to be returned. He realized then that the greatest legacy wasn't a company or fortune. It was a chain reaction of humanity. One afternoon, Daniel received a letter, handwritten, creased, imperfect. It was from a man who had once been helped by the foundation during winter. The letter read, You didn't save my life. You reminded me it was worth saving. Daniel folded the paper carefully, holding it longer than necessary. For years, he had chased validation through numbers, growth charts, applause. None of it had ever felt like this. Later that day, Maya joined him on the balcony overlooking the city. Do you ever miss it? She asked softly. The power. Daniel shook his head. I had power before. I didn't have peace. They stood in silence, watching the lights flicker on below them, thousands of lives unfolding, each carrying invisible battles. Maya thought of the woman on the stairs, of Luis the janitor, of herself on the floor, hungry and afraid. She realized something vital. People don't need saviors. They need witnesses. Someone to say, I see you. I believe you. You're not invisible. And sometimes, that belief is enough to keep someone alive another day. The foundation received its millionth message quietly, without ceremony. Maya printed it out and taped it to the wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. The message simply said, Thank you for answering. Daniel smiled when he saw it. Answering. That was all it had ever been. One response. One choice. That evening, Maya returned home and found a small envelope taped to her door. Inside was $50 and a note written in uneven handwriting. I don't know who helped me when I needed it most, but today I can help someone else. Maya sat down and cried, not from sadness, but from awe. The circle had completed itself. Across the city, Daniel donated the last of his personal shares into the foundation's trust, not as a sacrifice, but as a release. He no longer needed to own anything to feel whole. Sometimes, the universe doesn't reward success. It rewards alignment. And everything finally felt aligned on a quiet night. Maya scrolled through her old phone. She found a message, the one that started everything. The accidental text, the $50 request. She stared at it, realizing how close she had come to deleting it, how close she had been to staying silent. She whispered to herself, What if I hadn't sent it? The answer chilled her. She closed the phone and looked out the window, city glowing like a constellation of second chances. Daniel, miles away, stood in his modest apartment, no penthouse in sight. He felt lighter than he ever had at the top. They had both lost things: status, certainty, comfort. But they had gained something far rarer, a life that made sense. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. And sometimes, honesty is the most healing thing we can offer, to ourselves and to each other. Years later, a plaque hung quietly in the foundation's hallway. No names, no dates, just one sentence. This began with a wrong message and a right response. Maya walked past it every morning, reminding herself that desperation wasn't weakness. It was courage reaching out. Daniel believed that too, because life doesn't always change through grand gestures. Sometimes it changes because someone asks for $50 and someone else decides to answer with compassion instead of judgment. And in that space between fear and kindness, everything transforms. Sometimes the smallest cry for help carries the greatest weight. A wrong message, a desperate moment, a single act of kindness. If this story touched your heart, remember, your response could change a life. Like, subscribe, and join our Heart Angels family, where compassion always answers.